breaking news. So it looked like some more information has been revealed about Napheesa Collier meeting with the commissioner to squash whatever quarrel they currently have.
The WNBA is on fire right now. And it's not because of the finals, it's because Napheesa Collier just dropped a bombshell that sent shockwaves through the entire league. What was supposed to be a private meeting between Collier and Commissioner Cathy Engelbart to clear the air has now been completely canceled, and insiders say the relationship is beyond repair.
So Napheesa Collier has canceled her meeting with WNBA commissioner that was supposed to have been set for this upcoming week. Now, this is a big time story. We know Fee went on her exit interview and stated the commissioner was not trying to help with negotiations. She pretty much was counting Caitlin Clark's pockets. And as of right now, she's looking real spooky as a commissioner.
This isn't just another player. It's a full-blown crisis at the top of the WNBA. Players are furious. Fans are outraged, and even analysts are hinting that Engelbart's leadership might be on the line. The commissioner's credibility is crumbling fast, and every word, every denial, and every headline is making it worse. The question now isn't whether things can be fixed, it's whether the league can survive the fallout. Because if Napheesa stands her ground, Cathy Engelbart might be facing the biggest reckoning of her career.
To fast forward to yesterday, we had the commissioner go on record, speak about her stance with Napheesa Collier, retracting allegedly her comments about Caitlin Clark, and she went on record and stated that she did not say those things about CC.
When news first broke that Napheesa Collier had officially canceled her scheduled meeting with WNBA Commissioner Cathy Engelbart, it didn't just raise eyebrows, it set the entire basketball world on edge. The meeting was supposed to be a step toward peace, a chance to mend fences after weeks of growing tension between the players and league leadership. But instead of reconciliation, Collier's cancellation turned into a loud message. There would be no more pretending that everything was fine.
Let's be real, if one side is not engaging, not even engaging with the other side, then that side is completely fine with the entire relationship going and the league being gone.
According to multiple reports, Collier initially agreed to meet with Engelbart to discuss what she described as a pattern of disrespect and lack of transparency within the league. The commissioner had been accused of making controversial remarks during private conversations about player compensation, allegedly suggesting that stars like Caitlin Clark and others should be grateful for the platform the league provides. For Collier, a veteran and respected voice within the WNBA, those words cut deep. It wasn't just about money, it was about respect.
So it says, breaking news, link star, Napheesa Collier has canceled her meeting with WNBA Commissioner Cathy Engelbart next week, sources tell me. And Engelbart press conference pushed the relationship beyond repair.
The cancellation didn't happen quietly. Journalists like Kendra Andrews confirmed that Collier had backed out of the meeting after Engelbart publicly denied ever making the comments in question. That denial, delivered at a carefully staged press conference before the WNBA Finals, was supposed to smooth things over. Instead, it did the exact opposite. Collier saw it as an insult, a public dismissal of her truth, and a refusal to take accountability. The moment Engelbart spoke to reporters, the bridge between her and one of the league's most respected players went up in flames. Within hours, the story spread across social media like wildfire.
Say Minnesota links for Napheesa Collier canceled the meeting. Collier had previously texted Engelbart that she was open to meeting with her next week to discuss the criticism of Engelbart and the league at her news conference this upcoming Tuesday. But Engelbart assertion at a Friday news conference that Collier depiction of a private conversation between them was filled with inaccuracies has pretty much pushed the relationship beyond repair.
Hashtags supporting Collier began trending, and fans filled comment sections with demands for Engelbart to apologize or even step down. What made the moment more explosive was the timing. The WNBA was in its biggest spotlight of the season, and instead of celebrating the finals, everyone was talking about a commissioner accused of lying and a star player refusing to back down. Behind the scenes, insiders described the situation as beyond repair. Sources close to both parties confirmed that trust had completely broken down. Collier felt betrayed. Engelbart felt cornered. and the rest of the league was left watching a slow-motion car crash unfold in real time.
A league spokesperson told ESPN that Collier had not yet notified Engelbart that she was canceling the meeting. Now, Engelbart on Friday vehemently denied saying that Caitlin Clark and other standouts should be on their knees in gratitude because of the platform the league has given them. As Collier claimed, "I did not make those comments," Engelbart said at her annual news conference ahead of Game 1, which that's what we all seen yesterday.
This wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a public unraveling of leadership in the middle of the league's most critical moment. For years, players had complained about feeling unheard, underpaid, and undervalued. Collier's decision to cancel the meeting symbolized a turning point. It wasn't just her personal protest, it was a statement for every athlete who had been told to stay quiet and be grateful. What began as one meeting turned into a power struggle that could redefine how players and league officials coexist. And as the backlash intensified, one thing became clear: this wasn't going away anytime soon. Because when a respected leader like Napheesa Collier takes a stand, the entire WNBA listens. But the real storm was just beginning.
This is not going to go away until Cathy stepped down. This is going to be a very, very big story throughout this offseason, pretty much throughout the WNBA, as long as Cathy is in charge. Cathy is not going to own up to what she said. She better hope like hell there is no audio to come out of her saying anything negative about Caitlin Clark, because we just seen a video I did this morning digging up stuff, and I'm getting word there's even more stuff in the pipeline. I'm sitting on it.
When Cathy Engelbart stepped up to the podium during her pre-finals press conference, she probably thought it would be an opportunity to calm the chaos and restore her image. Instead, her words became the spark that reignited the entire firestorm. The commissioner stood firm, denying ever making the disrespectful comments Napheesa Collier accused her of. She called the reports filled with inaccuracies and insisted she had nothing but respect for the players. But to the players and fans listening, it felt hollow, an other polished statement from a leader disconnected from the real pulse of her league. Engelbart's denial might have sounded professional, but the timing couldn't have been worse. The finals were supposed to showcase the best of women's basketball, not its internal fractures. Instead of focusing on the games, headlines shifted entirely toward her credibility. The press conference, meant to show transparency, came off as defensive and calculated, when she repeatedly described herself as disheartened and emphasized how emotional the players were. Many saw it as tone-deaf. It was a subtle way of dismissing Collier's claims as overreaction rather than accountability. What made things worse was how quickly the internet responded. Within minutes of her statement, social media lit up with side-by-side clips comparing Engelbart's words to past interviews where she had made similarly controversial remarks. About player gratitude and finances, fans weren't buying her story. Commentators accused her of gaslighting, suggesting she was trying to rewrite history in real time. Even former players weighed in, saying that this kind of denial was exactly why so many athletes had lost faith in league. Leadership. The backlash didn't just stay online. Several current players quietly began sharing solidarity messages on social media, including subtle likes, reposts, and emojis that made their stance clear. The message wasn't about gossip, it was about respect and truth. To many inside the WNBA, Engelbart's press conference felt like a slap in the face, a reminder that even when women in sports speak up, their experiences can still be brushed aside by corporate spin. Reporters noticed Engelbart's body language throughout the event: tightly crossed arms, controlled tone, and rehearsed phrases. She said she was confident she could rebuild trust with the players, yet nothing about her demeanor reflected sincerity. If anything, it felt like she was more concerned about protecting her image than addressing the deeper issue of broken communication. Her refusal to directly mention Collier by name only fueled speculation that she was trying to distance herself from accountability. The commissioner's denial wasn't seen as leadership, it was seen as damage control gone wrong. Instead of closing the wound, she made it wider. Collier's supporters doubled down, arguing that if Engelbart couldn't even acknowledge what happened behind closed doors, she had no business leading the league into its next chapter. And as the criticism poured in from every direction, one thing became undeniable: Cathy Engelbart's credibility had taken a massive hit. But what came next would turn her crisis into a full-blown rebellion. while Cathy Engelbart tried to downplay the controversy with carefully worded denials. Napheesa Collier wasn't about to let her narrative get rewritten. From the moment the commissioner's comments hit the airwaves, Collier made it clear she wasn't backing down. Her message was firm, her tone measured, and her conviction unwavering. She wasn't just standing up for herself. She was standing on behalf of every woman in the league who felt silenced, dismissed, or underappreciated. Collier's decision to cancel the meeting was more than a scheduling choice. It was an act of defiance. It told the world that no amount of PR spin or polished press statements could undo the damage already done. To her, sitting across the table from someone who refused to acknowledge their words wasn't negotiation, it was submission. And Collier, a finals MVP, Olympic gold medalist, and respected leader in the WNBA, wasn't about to play that game. In interviews and behind-the-scenes discussions, insiders said Collier had grown increasingly frustrated with Engelbart's leadership long before this controversy. She'd spent years pushing for better pay, more transparency, and genuine communication between players and the league office. Yet time after time, she and others felt stonewalled. So when the commissioner allegedly made remarks about players needing to be grateful for their platform, it struck a nerve that had been exposed for years. What made Collier's stand so powerful was her composure. She didn't launch personal attacks or emotional rants, she simply refused to accept a false narrative. Fans noticed, players noticed. Even the media began shifting tone, realizing that this wasn't about a single comment, it was about a pattern of disrespect and denial. Collier had drawn a line in the sand, and she was daring the league to cross it. Former players began publicly applauding her courage. Journalists called her the conscience of the WNBA. The timing couldn't have been more symbolic during the finals. When the league should have been celebrating its success, one of its brightest stars was calling out the cracks beneath the surface. Collier's stance exposed the uncomfortable truth. The WNBA's biggest problem wasn't marketing, viewership, or ticket sales, it was leadership. Her resolve also struck a chord with her peers. Within hours of her cancellation becoming public, quiet solidarity began forming in locker rooms across the league. Players from different teams, even those who often competed fiercely on the court, started showing unity online. They weren't just supporting Napheesa, they were standing up for the principle that their voices matter. For Collier, this wasn't rebellion, it was accountability. She was tired of empty apologies, tired of seeing players dismissed as emotional, and tired of hearing that the league was working on it. This time, she wanted action, not words. And her refusal to meet was her way of forcing the issue. By refusing to bend, Napheesa Collier had transformed from player to symbol, a quiet storm, shaking the very foundation of WNBA leadership. But as the story spread, it became clear she wasn't the only one ready to fight back. When Napheesa Collier stood her ground, the ripple effect across the league was immediate. One by one, some of the biggest names in women's basketball began voicing their support, and the player who grabbed the most attention was Caitlin Clark. The rookie sensation, often seen as the face of the league's new era, didn't stay silent. In an interview, she acknowledged that Napheesa made a valid point about how the league treats its players, coming from someone with Clark's spotlight and influence. Those words carried serious weight. It wasn't just about solidarity, it was about legitimacy. Clark's support proved that this wasn't a petty disagreement between player and commissioner. It was a real issue echoing through locker rooms everywhere. Her comments ignited headlines and fan debates, forcing even neutral observers to pick sides. When the most marketable player in the WNBA begins to align with a movement questioning the commissioner's integrity, it's no longer a rumor, it's a revolution. Behind the scenes, more players started making subtle gestures of support. Veterans reposted clips of Napheesa's statements. Teammates liked posts calling for transparency and accountability. Analysts on ESPN pointed out how rare it was to see so many players stand united publicly against league leadership. This kind of collective resistance hadn't been seen in years, ended. Scared the WNBA front office, what made this even more significant was the timing. The league was in the middle of the finals, a moment meant to showcase unity and progress. Instead, it was fractured. During pre-game interviews, players were asked more about the controversy than the championship itself. What should have been a celebration of basketball excellence had turned into a spotlight on dysfunction and mistrust. The contrast was striking. The athletes were performing at an all-time high, while the league's leadership was sinking into chaos. Fans noticed too. Social media became a battleground of opinions. Hashtags like #StandWithNap, HeESA, and #PlayersFirst began trending. Fans who normally argued over team rivalries were suddenly united in calling for change. Many saw this as a defining moment for the WNBA's credibility. Whether it would continue operating under outdated power dynamics or finally give players the respect they've earned. Caitlin Clark's involvement also neutralized the usual criticism that player activism divides the fan base. She's adored by mainstream audiences, casual fans, and media outlets. So when she stood by Napheesa, it reframed the story from player drama to leadership accountability. The message was simple. Even the league's brightest new star could see the problem, and she wasn't alone. Other stars like A'ja Wilson, Kelsey Plum, and Breanna Stewart reportedly voiced private frustration about Engelbart's dismissive tone in past negotiations. The unity was growing quietly, but steadily. The players weren't just venting, they were organizing by now. What started as one canceled meeting had turned into a movement. The message was echoing loud and clear. If Cathy Engelbart wouldn't listen, the players would make her hear them. And the next wave of revelations would take that defiance to a whole new level. As the public drama between Napheesa Collier and Cathy Engelbart reached full volume, insiders began whispering about something even deeper, a growing divide within the league office itself. According to several reports from ESPN and independent journalists, tensions between Engelbart and her staff had been simmering for months, long before this latest controversy exploded. What looked like a simple disagreement between a commissioner and a player was actually the tip of an iceberg that had been forming behind closed doors. Sources claimed that Engelbart's management style had alienated several high-ranking employees. Some described her as distant and overly corporate, focused more on PR and sponsorship deals than the actual well-being of players. Others said she had developed a pattern of brushing off internal concerns, especially when it came to player relations and communication with the WNBA. "The culture is cold," one insider told reporters. "There's a sense that decisions are made from the top with no real input from anyone else." The most explosive claim came from those familiar with the ongoing collective bargaining negotiations. They said the tension between Engelbart and the players' association had been worsening ever since discussions about revenue sharing and player compensation began. While players wanted a fair deal that reflected the league's growing popularity, Engelbart allegedly pushed back hard, citing financial caution and sustainability. But behind the scenes, many felt she was simply protecting the league's corporate interests at the expense of its athletes. And then came the alleged counting pockets comment. Engelbart's supposed remark about Caitlin Clark and other rising stars needing to be grateful for their platform. Though she denied ever saying it, that single accusation hit like a bomb inside the organization. Employees who once defended Engelbart began privately questioning her judgment. Some even speculated that her leadership was doing long-term damage to the league's reputation. It wasn't just about what she said, it was about how she handled it afterward. What really shook people was her refusal to acknowledge fault or even meet Collier halfway. Rather than taking a conciliatory tone, Engelbart reportedly doubled down in internal meetings, insisting the controversy was overblown and that the media had twisted her words. That kind of deflection frustrated many who believed the situation could have been resolved quietly, with humility and transparency. Instead, it spiraled into a crisis of leadership. Meanwhile, the WNBA was quietly strategizing. Union leaders were reportedly in constant contact, discussing whether to demand formal accountability from the commissioner. They knew that public support was on their side and that momentum was growing. The question wasn't if the relationship between Engelbart and the players was damaged, was how long the league could function before something broke completely. By now, it was clear that the chaos wasn't isolated to one controversy. The WNBA was facing a structural reckoning, one that exposed cracks from the top down. The players were tired, the office was divided, and Cathy Engelbart's grip on power was slipping fast. And the next stage of the crisis would push the league into full-blown panic. Once the story broke that Napheesa Collier had canceled her meeting and that Cathy Engelbart was denying all wrongdoing, the media machine kicked into overdrive. What started as a WNBA controversy quickly became a nationwide headline. Every major sports outlet from ESPN to Bleacher Report was covering the escalating fallout. Talk shows debated whether Engelbart had lost control of her league. Commentators dissected every quote, every denial, every player reaction like it was a political scandal. For the first time in years, the WNBA wasn't trending for its games, it was trending for its chaos. On social media, the response was immediate and explosive. Fans flooded X, Instagram, and TikTok with clips of Engelbart's press conference and Collier's previous interviews. The reactions weren't split down the middle, they were overwhelmingly against the commissioner. Hashtags like #FireCathy, #StandWithNapESA, and #PlayersDeserveBetter began trending within hours. Even sports journalists who normally avoided controversy started taking sides. When leadership loses the locker room, it loses the league. One headline read, perfectly summarizing the growing sentiment. Fans weren't just angry, they felt betrayed. Many of them had supported the WNBA through its struggles for visibility and respect, believing the league was finally entering a new era. But now it looked like the person tasked with leading that transformation had become its biggest obstacle. Some fans accused Engelbart of prioritizing image over progress, pointing out how she often appeared at corporate events and media photo ops while avoiding uncomfortable player issues. Others shared clips from old interviews, claiming her tone had always been dismissive toward players, asking for more support. The timing couldn't have been worse. The finals should have been the WNBA's moment to shine a chance to capitalize on record ratings and global attention. Instead, the league's biggest stage turned into a battlefield for trust and accountability. During post-game press conferences, reporters asked players about the controversy instead of their performance. Every answer became another headline. Every silence was interpreted as a statement. It was no longer just a story about Napheesa Collier, it was a referendum on Cathy Engelbart's leadership. The more Engelbart tried to regain control, the worse it got. Her attempts to pivot the narrative back to basketball fell flat because fans refused to move on. Even casual viewers, drawn in by Caitlin Clark's star power, began noticing how disconnected leadership seemed from the players who actually carried the league's momentum. It became painfully clear that the issue wasn't going away through silence, it was growing stronger with every denial. As the firestorm grew, one question echoed across the sports world. Who would step in to stop the bleeding? Rumors began circulating that the NBA's front office, particularly Commissioner Adam Silver, was quietly monitoring the situation. For many fans, that was both comforting and alarming. It meant the WNBA's problems had reached a level too big to ignore. The league was no longer just facing criticism, it was facing a reckoning. The pressure was mounting from every direction, and the commissioner's chair had never looked more unstable. But the real shock came when whispers of NBA intervention turned into something far more serious. As the tension inside the WNBA reached a boiling point, the attention quietly shifted toward one man who could change everything in NBA Commissioner Adam Silver. Though he rarely comments publicly on WNBA operations, his influence behind the scenes is undeniable. The WNBA exists under the NBA's umbrella, and when the league's reputation starts crumbling, it's Silver who ultimately faces questions from sponsors, media partners, and investors. Insiders began hinting that Silver was growing increasingly frustrated with how Cathy Engelbart was handling the crisis, especially as the backlash threatened to overshadow the NBA's own postseason media cycle. Behind closed doors, league executives reportedly briefed Silver on the situation, outlining how player trust had evaporated, fan sentiment had turned toxic, and the finals narrative had been hijacked by controversy. Silver, known for his calm but firm leadership style, was said to be deeply concerned that Engelbart's leadership was no longer uniting the league, but dividing it. One source described the mood inside the NBA offices as tense and watchful, with officials quietly assessing whether the WNBA could continue moving forward under the same commissioner. Publicly, Silver remained diplomatic. When asked about the situation during a media event, he offered a neutral response about the importance of communication between players and leadership. But to those who understood how the NBA operates, that silence spoke volumes. Whenever Silver avoids taking a direct stance, it's usually because internal evaluations are already underway. And by this point, every indicator suggested that Engelbart's position was under review. There were even rumors circulating that several team owners had begun informal conversations about her future. Some wanted to give her a chance to repair the damage, while others believed a leadership change was inevitable. The problem wasn't just the Napheesa Collier fallout. It was the accumulation of unresolved issues under Engelbart's tenure. From officiating complaints to player pay disputes and now public mistrust, her administration had become synonymous with controversy. Silver's potential involvement raised new questions about what comes next. Would the NBA intervene directly, or would it push Engelbart to step down quietly to save face? Historically, Silver has been decisive in moments of crisis, as seen when he swiftly removed problematic executives in the NBA to protect the league's integrity. Many believed that if the situation continued to escalate, he wouldn't hesitate to do the same here. Meanwhile, the players saw an opening. With the NBA watching, the WNBA began preparing a formal statement demanding reform, accountability, and structural change at the executive level. For the first time, players were no longer just reacting, they were organizing strategically. The unity between Napheesa, Caitlin Clark, and the rest of the league had transformed from protest into momentum. As whispers of board meetings and private evaluations began circulating, one thing was certain: the walls around Cathy Engelbart were closing in. The commissioner's strongest ally had now become her quiet overseer. And the moment Adam Silver decided to act, the future of the WNBA would change forever. By the time the finals wrapped up, the noise surrounding Cathy Engelbart's leadership had reached deafening levels. What started as a dispute over words had turned into a movement calling for her resignation. Napheesa Collier's cancellation had unleashed something bigger than a scheduling controversy. It exposed years of pent-up frustration from players, fans, and even staff members who felt the commissioner had lost touch with the heart of the game. And now, those voices were no longer whispering, they were shouting in unison. Petitions began circulating online, demanding Engelbart's removal. Hashtags like #StepDownCathy and #RebuildTheWNBA were trending daily, collecting tens of thousands of interactions. Players who once stayed silent about league politics started speaking up, sharing subtle posts about leadership, accountability, and transparency. ESPN analysts debated her future on live broadcasts, questioning whether Engelbart had the credibility to lead the league into its next chapter. The more she tried to ride out the storm, the worse it got. Silence had become her enemy. The biggest blow came when several former WNBA executives publicly expressed doubt about her ability to repair the damage. They pointed out that a commissioner's main job is to protect the league's reputation, and in that regard, Engelbart had failed spectacularly. Sponsors were reportedly uneasy, concerned that ongoing drama was overshadowing the WNBA's positive momentum. Some insiders claimed key stakeholders had already started privately discussing succession scenarios. Inside the locker rooms, morale was low, but unity was high. Players felt that for the first time, they were being heard not just as athletes, but as professionals, demanding respect. Napheesa Collier's stand had ignited a collective awakening. Caitlin Clark's support turned that spark into a blaze. And by the time the season ended, nearly every conversation about the WNBA's future included one unavoidable question: can Cathy Engelbart stay? Meanwhile, media outlets were uncovering more behind-the-scenes details that painted the commissioner as increasingly isolated. Her relationship with the WNBA had reportedly broken down completely. Meetings were described as strained and unproductive. Sources said Engelbart believed the backlash would fade once the finals were over. But it didn't. Instead, the offseason was shaping up to be even more brutal. Every podcast, every sports show, every tweet seemed to echo the same message. Leadership change was coming. Then came the whispers from New York and Los Angeles. Two major franchises rumored to be lobbying the league office for a new direction. They wanted someone who could connect with players, repair trust, and bring energy back to the league's image. Even executives who once defended Engelbart's corporate polish were now calling her approach outdated and tone-deaf. By now, it wasn't a question of if, it was a question of when. The calls for her removal had grown from online chatter to institutional pressure. The WNBA had reached a crossroads, and everyone knew it, because if Cathy Engelbart refused to step down, the players might take matters into their own hands. And when the athletes who built the league decide they've had enough, no commissioner, no matter how powerful, can stop what comes next. What began as a simple canceled meeting ended up shaking the foundation of the entire WNBA. Napheesa Collier's decision to walk away didn't just expose tension, it revealed a league divided between players who want change and leadership clinging to control. Cathy Engelbart's denials, the fan outrage, and the media firestorm all pointed to one truth: the WNBA had reached a breaking point. Through courage and conviction, Collier forced a conversation the league could no longer ignore. Her stance inspired players, united fans, and put accountability front and center. Whether Engelbart steps down or not, the message is clear: the era of silent compliance is over. The players have found their voice, and they're not backing down. The WNBA may never be the same again, but maybe that's exactly what it needed to finally grow stronger.